Just really pick your mood, really allow yourself to pivot when need to and be in discovery, to be flexible and to even step into kind of like your 8-year-old self and just be curious.
Welcome to the Habit of Possibility podcast, the show about turning obstacles into opportunities. I'm your host, Robbie Spier Miller. Today on the show, we're talking about how to build better relationships in business and in life. Our guest, Tree Ryde, is an expert at helping people and organizations thrive. Tree, it's so great to have you here on the Habit of Possibility podcast. And the topic that I want to explore with you is how you're really excellent at deciding how you want something to go and just bringing the attitude and the energy to a situation so that you kind of gather people up in that and they follow you there. And so all kinds of things happen that wouldn't have happened if you didn't bring that with you. So I would love for you to share with people how you do that so people can learn how to do that for themselves.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Thanks for having me, of course. And the first thing that comes to mind is I'm imagining about how something wants to be. And I even get into the energy of that. Like, it's all based on fun. Anyone that's ever met me, I love fun. And so that's the first thing. So I'm imagining something and, that's going to be so much fun. And the other part of it is that I get really excited about being with somebody that's experiencing something for the first time. So even though I've done something, or maybe even I haven't done something, so even I maybe am experiencing it for the first time, but I've probably imagined it in my head. So it's almost like maybe I think that I've experienced it a little bit, but it really is the mood that I'm picking first and the imagination that goes along with the mood. So, and then even the excitement starts to build as I'm starting to plan things and starting to invite people and building on the conversation of what it is that we're going to be doing. Okay. So, yeah.
Great. So it's almost like the innocent eye where you're just excited about having an experience and then that's it. That's all there is. And I think sometimes like when we're little kids, it's easy to get excited because everything's new and we're changing all the time. And then as we grow up, it's not like that anymore, but you keep that with you and you bring that with you. So I think that's part of the, and what I've noticed as you do this, Tree, is that you're not really like, if it doesn't quite work out that way, you just move on. So some people get hung up on things didn't work out the way they wanted them to, and then they get all disappointed or heartbroken or cynical or whatever. And like you totally don't do that. You just move on to the next thing and learn from it and keep going. So is that accurate to say?
Yeah, that's accurate. And what I would add too is that I'm always in discovery. So even if something doesn't turn out the way that I thought it would. So here's a good story. I invited a whole bunch of people to go to this restaurant because they had live music and there was this gal that was singing there and we absolutely loved her. She's like 14 years old and she was singing like Johnny Cash and like all this great stuff. So I invited probably about 10 people to come because she was there every Sunday night. So I invited people, we show up, she was not there. And there was this guy that he literally looked like Elvis Presley just walked out of a coffin. And, like he was literally like, and so it was the complete opposite of what I was like upping everything to do. But we still had a good time because we made it funny because it was quite comical, literally. And then we noticed halfway through that he wasn't even playing the guitar, that it was actually like a backtrack that he was doing. So we just made it fun along the way and everyone still had a good time. So I think it's about really making the outcome bigger than any kind of emotion that could potentially be. So the outcome was just having fun, listening to music, spending time with the people that we very much enjoy. So it's keeping your flashlight, I know this is your analogy, right? Your flashlight on what it is that you're looking to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I'm understanding you're saying is actually that you're deciding what emotion you want to have. And so regardless of what happens, you're going to find a way to have that fun, right? If it's an
Mhm.
emotion of fun or enjoyment or appreciating people or,
Yep.
laughter or whatever it is, that you're finding a way to have that, even if it's not quite the way you expected.
Yeah, bang on. And also too, it's the repetition of practicing that emotion over and over again. So if I were to pick like three main emotions that I practice over and over again, it's fun, like laughter, like having a sense of humor over humanity kind of thing. Another one is discovery. So just being in so much curiosity. And then the last one is flexibility. Like being like finding the fun or even a song to like pivot from one thing to the next. And I'd say these are the three kind of main things that I certainly practice these moods, dare I say, almost every day. So yeah.
Okay. And you have a life just like everybody else's. It's not like everything's great, right? You
Yeah.
have ups and downs, and it's really interesting to watch your response to whatever happens.
Well, and actually, it's funny because I didn't even tell you this, but my car broke down, so I don't have a car. You
I
didn't,
was
so,
wondering why I
yeah.
didn't see your. Yeah, that's why when I came in, I thought you weren't here because I didn't see your Jeep.
Right.
Yeah.
And so to your point, I was like, so again, just really picking the mood. Okay, cool. Like, you know what? I'm not held down by a car. I don't have to go get gas. I don't have to like do whatever. I feel kind of free, right? Because
Right.
I don't have a car. No one knows where I am, right? Like,
Yeah, it's an adventure.
yeah, again, so discovery, right? So I'm in discovery and I'm just like, okay, I'm going to be here, I'm going to be there. And, maybe Robbie can drop me off on her way home. Maybe not. I can Uber. I have options, right? And then really being flexible that, am I going to leave at whatever time or I can do some work here or do whatever, but it's that flexibility. So yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and I really get the idea of looking at everything as an adventure. Like last year, I was skiing in Italy in the Dolomite Mountains, and it's a huge mountain range, like nothing like we have here in Canada. It's like a whole other scale. And at the end of the day, I was skiing with my son, and he loved just exploring the whole mountain and trying
Mm.
different hills. But he thought we were ending where we needed to end and give back our skis because we had rentals, and we didn't. We ended up somewhere else, and the ski lifts closed, and like we were where we were. So lo and behold, there's a taxi waiting there for people just like us who ended up not where they were supposed to be. So we asked the taxi to take us back to where we needed to go. And it turns out it was a 45-minute ride.
Oh my gosh.
And we
That's a
barely made
ride.
it to give back the skis before the ski shop closed. And it was like a very expensive in euros taxi ride. Right. But then we also missed, like, we had this whole plan for getting home and we missed our connections and we had to get home another way. And like it was this series of things, but we had all these experiences we wouldn't normally have. Like we were hungry. So we went into this bakery and we chatted with the woman there and kind of learned more about the culture. And so a lot of things happened along the way that were like, we will remember that experience. It was an adventure. But somebody might go, oh, I can't believe we had to, spend 45 minutes driving back, or we had to pay all that extra money, or right.
Yeah.
So looking at things that way is really helpful because, hey, you don't plan for it, but when it happens, you may as well just go with it.
Well, and they say sometimes some of the not worst moments, but some of the not planned moments are the best stories later, right? Like you would not have that story to tell had that not happened.
Right. And we never would have planned for that to happen.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
It would have just stopped at skiing. And where was that place that you just mentioned?
The Dolomites.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just skiing but you actually had this adventure and also modeling for your kids that it's totally okay, that you can just pivot and move and it's not a big deal. Like, so even for parents, if they're getting really frustrated or they're freaking out or they're getting in an unuseful emotional state, then it's unuseful because their kids are going to model that, or they're going to be in fear. If something doesn't go just so, oh no, the parent's going to get upset or something like that. And so, yeah. And like you said, it's just life. Like,
yeah. Yeah. So I would love for you to give us an example of where you've done this with regard to relationships, like when things do get messy. So if you're in a relationship with somebody, any kind, it could be business or personal, but can you think of an example where things were not going the way you wanted? And like you're very good at being the first to take the lead in getting things on a new track, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So the first thing is I notice if something doesn't feel right. So whether it's in, like, when you talk about relationships, so whether it's in the other person, we've all had the experience of walking into a room and you can just feel that the energy isn't really right. So right then I'll check in. So for example, if it's my husband and I'll walk in and I can sense a mood that whether maybe he didn't have a good day and so I'm just sort of checking in a lot of ways. So normally I'm very high energy. So in that moment, I'll make sure that I'm not high energy because if they didn't have a great day and then all of a sudden there's me coming in, let's go, hi, this is amazing, right? Like, it's just kind of disrespectful and that's not how I am. So I'm always very much reading the room. So no matter where I am, whether I'm at home or even with my best friend, like we can be anywhere and I can just sort of tap into, well, actually anybody really, and just kind of see what's happening in terms of energy. So then I'll approach the person and I might just be like, hey, and I'll actually touch them. And in general, if it's a relationship based, then I know the person well enough that I can. Well, sometimes I do touch random people, but it's a whole other episode.
We won't go there.
Yeah.
So not today. People will have to tune in for that one.
But I'm really letting them know that they're in a safe place, because I find so many people nowadays, they struggle with having what I could call a hard conversation, whether they are embarrassed to be vulnerable, or they're beating themselves up in their head about something and they feel either ashamed to express what's happening or what's going on. So even with with anybody, it's bringing your energy to wherever that person's at, connecting with them in some way, and just starting a conversation about anything, right? And sometimes I'll add some like comedic stories or to get the person into the comfort of their own vulnerability, right? So that it's like I'll tell even a really funny story about what I did, or just, oh yeah, you know what? Wow, wasted money on that. Like, not going to do that again. And just making things no big deal about myself or things. And I'll throw a story out here. I'll throw a story out there. And then all of a sudden the person will start to open up, because it's what they realize is what's going on in their mind is no big deal, right? Because we've all bought something and wasted money in that way, right? We've all tripped and fell. We've all behaved inappropriately at some point in time in our life, right? Like, it's just us being human. So it's kind of just throwing everything out on the table, knowing that, like, here we are, right? It's almost a strip poker, right? You just throw it out.
There's always something else to take off. Because you're always moving on to the next thing, right? So what I see here is a lot of movement where you're keeping focused on wanting to connect with the person and having a positive connection.
You got it.
And you're going to keep trying things until you get there. Mm-hmm. And I think where a lot of people get stuck is that they stay in the negative energy or the story that's not useful, or the idea they have about the other person or the situation, and they indulge it, or they make it bigger than it needs to be. Whereas, like, you go right past it and not ignoring it. Like, if something needs to be talked about, you will absolutely talk about it, but you don't look at it as a defining thing.
Right. You got it.
Things are in motion and changing all the time. And so it's something that you're going to move through with them to get somewhere else. It's not a destination.
You got it. And I'll give you an example of this. One morning, I think months ago, husband woke up and we were just getting ready to go out the door and stuff like that, and I can tell there was something on his mind, and I'm just like, hey, what's noodling in your brain? And he's like, I got this email from a customer last night, and he's like, yeah, it was a big long email, and so now I got to go into work, and I got to really like construct an email back to him. And I just said to my husband, I said, well, why don't you just call him? And he just sat there. He's like, huh. Because the thing is if somebody's emailing you like 11 o'clock at night, guaranteed they've just, who knows, right? 11 p.m., tired, bored, whatever emotion that you're in. And people can draft an email. But when you get someone on the phone, and you always tell all of us that, right? Like, get someone on the phone, talk to them. And because otherwise he would have spent an hour and a half like doing email. But when you talk on the phone, that's the best way to communicate, to clear the air. And it could have just taken 5 minutes, right?
Right. And so when you're doing things by email or text, you're not actually connected with the person, and you can't gauge their mood or have any influence on the mood. And you have no idea how they're responding to what you're saying. So when you're having a conversation or an interaction, you can adjust in real time. And that's such a powerful thing.
It's a very powerful thing. And even I think my husband came home that night and he's like, oh yeah, it was like a 5-minute conversation. The guy's even apologized half the stuff. He said he was tired and he's talking to his wife or whatever, and just okay. So communication is really key, and it is that flow. Like, I find the more movement, people just feel better, right? Like, so yeah, when we stay stagnant as human beings, then it's too much time up here.
Yeah, yeah. And I would add to that I think it's very common with many people that if let's say they get upset with somebody, it could be personal or in business, if they get upset with somebody and there's nothing next, then they assume that that's defining their relationship. And maybe they were just in a bad mood, or they were under a lot of pressure or something, right?
Yeah.
And so it's making sure, like the saying, never go to bed angry. So if we say, when you're in relationships with people, you want to end on a note that's useful and positive, no matter what happens in between. With our clients, we say that no matter what happens in the middle, you want to start well and you want it to end well. And so if you're interacting, you can influence that.
Yeah, and another way how it could also be explained too is that whatever mood anybody is in, whether they're reading an email or, like you said, like the beginning or end of an interaction, whatever mood that is, that's how somebody's reading an email or a message. Or whatever in the last interaction that you've had with somebody, whatever that mood is, even when you think of them in your mind, that's how you think of them. So if it's on a negative note, then you're thinking of them negatively. Right?
Or yourself negatively, because sometimes people are embarrassed about how they themselves behave. And then they're worried about what does that other person think of them, and then they might avoid connecting with them and or things like that. So there's that as well.
Yeah. And every corporate business I work with, like, there's always one or two staff members that they've made up in their mind that somebody in the group doesn't like them, and then they're treating that person that they don't like them, whereas they've just made it up in their head. And whenever I'm doing corporate training, I always like look for those people, or I'll just put it on the table, right? So the same example that you were asking me before, I'm just throwing everything out there so that people can be in discovery. And even people listening to this, what kind of things can you throw out there to get the people around you in discovery? Because it would be different for different cultures. It would be different for depending on, I don't know, I'm going to say status or industries. So anybody that's listening to this, really be curious about how it is that you can change your own life in amazing ways. What what could be your 3 different moods that you can practice each and every single day? What can you imagine in your mind to allow yourself to have the fun you want or to have the life you want? And I mean, for me, I gravitate more towards fun. I love seeing people laugh, but maybe your version is about information, discovery. Like, I met this one person once and they just knew a lot about a lot of things. And I was like fascinated. Like, I just got like sucked into, I was like, oh, tell me more. Like, so that's a different version of it as well, of the same thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So one thing that's important about this is that not everybody is like a super high energy person, right? Like for you, that's your personality. You love it. I'm a more reserved person, but you can still have this focus and this connection with people and this awareness of the importance of the tone and the mood of the situation, no matter what your kind of tendency is, if that makes sense. So you can always model people who are higher energy and become more like that. And at the same time, if we have this value placed on what the quality of the connection is and wanting to nurture that, I think that that's a really good focus for people, whether it's in their romantic relationship or with their kids or with people in business, in anywhere in life, that sets the tone for everything that happens next and people's expectations of it.
And that's a huge point, Robbie, just having that connection. Like, I know for you and I and everything that we do, we have this, I don't know if the word is profound. You're my word person. Like, if it's profound, but we really genuinely care about every human, like genuinely. And that really allows us to connect easily with people. So even that's a key component for any human, that if you're looking to even get out of unuseful emotions or dialogue and focus more on actually connecting with people, because that, as us as a species, that is kind of like our natural state, I believe anyways. So
right. So if we judge ourselves or other people, or we kind of pigeonhole, then it goes in a negative direction. And if we focus on the positive connection we want to have, things tend to go in a more positive direction, even if we need to have difficult conversations, which often need to happen, right? Like you and I have had some difficult conversations over the years.
Yeah, but that's what also, oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but that's what actually has built the amount of respect that we have for one another. Like, I always joke, I'm like, yeah, we've been together like 30 years. It's really been about 12, 13, something like that. But it's because the same rhythm that we're talking about, that we're always going to the next thing. What's the next growth? Like, even as businesses, Hypnosis Training Canada, Burlington Hypnosis, and then what's the link?
Oh, MindLink Consulting.
MindLink Consulting, yeah.
Say that again, because we're going to have to edit that.
Okay. And MindLink Consulting and Business Growth Results. So there's all of these elements that, because Robbie and I, we have those hard conversations, but it's the underlining tone is very respect. Like, we're very respectful for each other. We genuinely want to see each other's businesses grow, and we support each other in that as well. So it's not about judgment. It's not about anything else. It's really about what we call the mission. Right? Yeah,
right.
it's about the mission.
It is. And it's wonderful that we have that. Keep in mind that not every relationship you have is going to be like this, because it does take two. Yeah. And so Tree's really good at going first and kind of demonstrating that, but not everybody's going to respond in kind. And so I think even in those situations where somebody might not have our best interests at heart, or they might not join us, we can still go in this direction and make it as good as it can be, while being realistic about taking care of ourselves in the situation, or deciding where the boundaries need to be.
And that's one thing actually that I had to learn over time, and is the boundaries piece. Because sometimes what would happen is I get so excited and let's do this, let's do that, and this is going to be amazing.
Yeah.
And it's great having good support around you to kind of like bring you back even a bit.
Mhm.
right? And then kind of look at it from a larger perspective and then go forward again. And so, because I've had great support, you and my husband, and other people, but over time, I've learned how to do that myself because I'm really like, I imagine that it's going to be so amazing. Then sometimes when I go, and if it's not, sometimes like it's like I get disappointed, but I keep moving through to the next thing. I'd be like, oh, okay, well, I've been somewhere, and then, well, let's just go somewhere else, right? It's keep on going and keep
Mhm.
on going into discovery.
Good. And I think that an important piece of this is having our eye on being about possibilities and also knowing where we need to put things in place to protect ourselves
Mm.
if necessary.
Mhm.
I was talking to somebody recently who wants to move in with her boyfriend. And so she was worried about protecting her assets.
Mm.
And so I said, did you get some kind of agreement done ahead of time? Because hopefully this will be wonderful and awesome, but if it's not, she can at least relax knowing that she'll be okay anyway.
Mhm.
But if that's not in place, it can be wonderful at the beginning, but if it doesn't turn out the way you want, all bets are off in terms of what will happen. So I think we need to be optimistic
Mhm.
and realistic at the same time. And how I look at this in terms of working with clients and companies and interacting with people in general is that I'll be generous and open to a point, and then I'm going to observe. So I observe how people respond, and it gives me a lot of intel about how far I can take that,
Mm.
if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Like I let them show me where they're at. And I'm kind of like, I'll go further than maybe a usual person would, but not
Mm.
so far that I'm going to put myself in a difficult position.
Mhm. And and I love what you're talking about when it comes to creating boundaries. Like with moving in, that's a great example. Even your own boundaries of your as you're observing somebody, because it's even like the in between. So using the example of like what I like to call good housekeeping, right? Having a document in place that, hey, we're going to move in together. Like what does
Mhm.
that look like? Let's have something in place in terms of assets. That's good housekeeping. Um, because if that wasn't in place, that'll always be in the back of somebody's mind.
Well, and let's add to
Mhm.
that if somebody has a difficult time with that, then you might wonder where they're at with things, right?
Yeah.
So every interaction it reveals things about people, right?
Mhm.
Every challenge. I kind of look at all of this kind of like going on an outward bound trip. Those really intense trips in nature where people go and they're like basically abandoned in the wild and they have to survive and they're not given anything, right? They have to like find or kill their food. They have to keep
Oh my
warm.
gosh.
They have to survive for a number of days on their own. And so I know some people who've done this sort of thing, and also some people who lead those kinds of trips. And it's interesting because as they go through these experiences as a group, no matter how they felt about each other beforehand, because they went through these difficult experiences, they bond over that
Mhm.
because they've been through something together, and they also discover an appreciation for each other through those difficult experiences. And so I've seen a lot of examples where like the really truly connected awesome relationships come from those kinds of things. It's like there's this crucible that the relationship gets forged in, and trusting that crucible while having an eye on where we want things to go, I think is a really valuable thing.
That's a very cool example because even when they're out there, they're almost getting saved by people because people have all different skills. And then they get to prove themselves with showing up what their skill is as well. And there's no other distractions living wherever you're living and going throughout your everyday thing, going grocery shopping to work and all this, that I can see how it would create an awesome bond.
And let's add to that, that if you're in a situation like that, it's survival. So you do have to be outcome oriented. You can't get caught up in how you feel about the other person or how you feel about
Mhm.
yourself, because it is literally about survival. So there's no space for that. And so I'm sure that that helps that situation. But as we learn how to do that, even when we have all the amazing comforts we have and the safety we have in our society these days, we can still enjoy discovering that kind of connection by being willing to engage. But I think in our lives, it's more of a choice because we're not in that kind of survival situation, literally.
Yeah, an extreme environment.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
people get away with sulking or judging or having all kinds of bad attitudes because they can get away with that. Their
Mhm.
life isn't at risk, and they can make their kind of sense of self-worth or grudges more important than the outcome.
Mhm. Yeah, if you're out in the wild, there's no big comfy couch and Netflix to throw on to
That's right.
stay in your emotion. You're really just searching for food, creating your own shelter and things like that. And I think too, when we talk about like picking your mood or really getting excited about different things that you want to do in life, it's a better option than sitting on your couch and sulking. It's a better option than indulging emotions. And I find there's so many people that can find themselves in these sort of unuseful pockets
Mm.
where I love this conversation because we're showing people like a different way, like a different way
Mm.
that that they can live. Yeah, so I encourage people to share this, to practice this themselves, to experience it themselves.
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. One other thing I want to add is I've worked with a lot of people who they've had some negative experiences. And so if something is like fairly neutral, they're happy because
Mm.
nothing negative is happening. Or there are people who like thrive on danger or
Mhm.
challenge, even if it's negative challenge, because they're used to that. Maybe they grew up with a lot of that. And so they don't really know what's possible in terms of like a positive connection and having things be better than neutral. And I think a lot of people get stuck because they settle for things that aren't really that great
Mm.
without creating something better. And I don't, and when I'm talking about this, I think it's very important to nurture relationships and stay with them. So that piece is important. But as we do that, we don't have to just surrender into the status quo. We can go in new directions. We can encourage new connections and new outward bound trips or new ways of interacting with people so that it can be even better. So sometimes we need to shake things up.
Yeah, and I think even all the time we need to shake things up. Specifically, I mean, if you're
You do,
yeah,
yes.
yeah, like with any relationship, specifically, if your partner, husband, wife, or partner, that you always have to shake it up. If you're just in the same old routine, then your mind is gonna look for some sort of adventure, right? It's
Right.
gonna look for something somewhere, or even create an exit strategy because maybe you're bored and you're starting to blame things on this, that, or the other thing. Where give yourself permission to really push the envelope or to spread yourself out and to see where those edges are and then surpass where those edges are.
Mm.
Because all of a sudden you're going to learn something new. You know, so this is exactly what the Pina Colada song is on. I was talking to somebody about that and they didn't even realize the word. So anyone listening to this, if you know the Pina Colada song, it's literally about a husband and wife that the wife put an ad out and then the husband responded to the ad, but he didn't know that it was the wife. And then anyways, they met. So re-listen to that. You got to
They
spice it
chose
up.
each other through a
Yeah.
personal ad. They re-chose each other. Yeah.
Yeah. And in the ad was about these adventures. Do you like pina colada or so re-listen to that song and maybe implementing that into your own life or making your own version of it because it is true. So
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. And if you own a business or you work in a business or you're in some kind of leadership role or followership role, look at what can you do to have some new experiences or contribute in a new way, because that's what keeps things fresh. I think a lot of I believe that our society could be way more productive and satisfying for everybody if people really valued uh, experimenting and taking risks, reasonable risks, and contributing in new novel ways and just being in that mood,
Mhm.
both for themselves and for what they can create and contribute because of it. And I think that's something that people kind of get stuck, right? They get stuck sitting on the couch watching Netflix, or going to the same job every day and just, punching the clock or doing the everyday tasks. And no matter what your situation, that's completely unnecessary. You can always make it more fun and interesting.
Yeah, and I think people get stuck in their rules. So if you have these certain rules saying that, oh, I need to be home by this time, or I can't do this because I need to do this, well, do you really need to do that? Or can you really step out and do what you need to do? Specifically, even if you're a parent and you're just keeping like the same pattern throughout, that it's really good to change it up. And even in friend groups, like there's always one person in a friend group that is always doing all the planning and stuff like that, and a lot of people complain about being that person. Well, I'm that person and I absolutely love it, because it changes things for not just me, but all the people around me, which is awesome. And that's why we're here on this planet, to have experiences, I believe anyways. Yeah. So be curious if you have some rules or beliefs, or if you're trying to portray yourself in a certain way. Well, just stop it and have some fun, really.
And let's add that it's good to give other people the opportunity to be the one to take the initiative or plan something or do something their way, and for you to follow, right?
Yep.
So because you're so good at this, people are like, great, Tree's going to do everything. And sometimes that makes them weaker, or their sense of place in the world is affected by that, because they're not participating in as interactive a way as they could be. So I think it's good to take turns in leadership roles.
Specifically with husbands and wives too. Yeah, because that helped even my marriage, my relationship, because I let go of a bunch of that stuff.
Yeah, and a lot of people who work in companies, if they're given something to do and they don't feel like leadership or ownership of it, they'll do what they were told. But if they are given it as they're taking the lead, they're going to be much more invested in and engaged with what's happening. And so I think that can be a really awesome way to get people more contribute more at a company and be more excited to be there.
Oh, 100%. Even a lot of business owners, because the business maybe grew faster than what they thought it would, and they're still trying to do everything, even though they hired staff to do stuff, but they're still trying to, do this or do that, and to learning how to let go and let people take the lead, so that even totally be okay with letting them make mistakes as well, right? Because if they make mistakes, they're going to learn, and that's the best way to learn. So, yeah.
Awesome. All right. Is there anything else you want to share on this theme?
I just to review, just really pick your mood, really allow yourself to pivot when need to, and be in discovery, and to be flexible, and to even step into kind of like your 8-year-old self and just be curious.
And see everything as a living, breathing, moving, changing thing. That nothing's final. I think that's a big piece of where, you probably haven't seen it that way because you just do it that way, but that's how I see what you're doing.
Yeah. That's a great way to describe that. Yeah. Awesome.
Great. All right. Well, thanks so much. I think this will be really helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. So much fun.
Yeah, awesome. We'll have to do another episode on touching.
Oh, I would absolutely love that. I would totally, I want to do it. Yes, I would absolutely love that. Appropriate touching.
Of course. You can connect with Tree Ryde and learn more about how she can help you and your business at businessgrowthresults.com. Let us know what you think of the show. Reach out to us at mindlinkconsulting.com. And if you like the show, please rate and review us so other people can find us too. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm Robbie Spier Miller, the host of the Habit of Possibility podcast. Tune in next time to learn more about how you can turn obstacles into opportunities and make the most of your life and career. And if you're interested in connecting with me and learning more about personal and business coaching, consulting, and training opportunities, go to mindlinkconsulting.com or hypnosistrainingcanada.com and schedule your free consultation.